Good evening. Welcome to the National News Broadcast. I'm Kasuni Balachandra.
And I'm Tilina Udayaratna. First off, we take a look at the headlines for tonight. A controlled price determined for rice. All rice mills taken under the essential services category. 54 COVID-19 infected patients fully recover. All pharmacies to be kept open until 2 p.m. except in the high-risk districts. The Foreign Secretary states the government is extremely concerned pertaining to the situation faced by Sri Lankans overseas. The Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna suspends the party membership of Pradeshia Sabha member Nalaka Ranavira. Predictions have been voiced that the world is set to face the worst economic crisis since 1930.
Moving on to those and other stories in detail. The government has taken steps to declare all rice mills as essential services upon the instructions of President Gotabaya Rajapaksa. The President's media division states the decision has been taken to ensure food security and to successfully carry out the COVID-19 quarantine process. The distribution of essential commodities, including rice, throughout the country was discussed at the meeting of the ruling parties, which was held recently. At the meeting, former parliamentarian Siripala Gamlat pointed out that most probably from the 10th of April, all rice mills will be closed until around the 20th of April. Responding to the concern, President Gotabaya Rajapaksa said if such a shortage is expected in the market, steps will have to be taken to have the rice mills open and functioning. Head of the Presidential Task Force on Essential Services, Basil Rajapaksa said if rice mills do not remain open, rice mills will have to be declared an essential service in order to ensure their functioning continues, as rice is the staple food of the country. Therefore, it is not possible for rice mills to be closed at this point. The main objective of the decision is to ensure the production, storage and distribution of rice and the supply of essential food items. All rice mill owners in the island need to engage in production. All small, medium and large-scale rice mill owners will be subject to the decision until further notice. In addition, the release issued by the President states that such rice mill owners should engage in the wholesale distribution of rice in the respective divisional secretariat zones and district secretariat zones. Presidential Secretary P.B. Jayasundara has instructed the acting IGP, the Director General of the Health Services, the Commissioner General of Food Supplies and the Chairman of the Consumer Affairs Authority in this regard. The release states currently a paddy harvest stock of 3 million metric tons has been received and 2/3 of it has been stored as rice stocks. As price hikes in rice and sabotages to the supply of rice are main obstructions to the quarantine process, President Gotabaya Rajapaksa has instructed the relevant sections to implement extensive supervision in this regard. Thereby, the Presidential Secretariat has advised for more attention to be paid to the home delivery of goods during this quarantine period. Meanwhile, the government has taken steps to continue with the declaration of pharmacies, drugstores and banking services as essential services. Meanwhile, with effect from today, the government has decided to determine a maximum retail price for rice. The Consumer Affairs Authority states thereby the price of a kilo of kirisamba has been determined at 125 rupees, whilst the maximum retail price of a kilo of rathukiyakalu and sudukakalu will be at 85 rupees. A kilo of nadu and samba can be sold at a retail price of 90 rupees. Chairman of the Consumer Affairs Authority, retired Major General Shanta Disanayake, says these prices will be effective from today.
In more news, Secretary to the Ministry of Foreign Relations Ravinatha Aryasinghe says the government is extremely concerned with regards to the situation faced by Sri Lankans living abroad. Speaking to the national television, the Foreign Secretary said the Sri Lankan diplomatic missions are already assisting the respective countries to address the difficulties faced by migrant Sri Lankans.
Since the Katunayak airport was closed for arrivals a couple of weeks ago, the focus and attention of our missions has been on trying to provide Sri Lankans abroad with whatever the necessities they need to get through this crisis. This may vary whether you are a student in South Asia, Southeast Asia, Australia, US or Europe, or whether you're an employee in the Middle East or Southeast Asia or East Asia, or if you happen to be visiting any of these countries around the world, either parents to see children or children to see parents, and those also holidaying. Now, it is difficult at a point like this for us to bring back everybody. Therefore, some basis has been established, and we have so far only brought back those who have been stuck in airports, 33 in number. At the moment, we are trying to understand the patterns of the spread of Sri Lankans across the world, so that then we know where they are. As you might know, the Sri Lanka Foreign Ministry, along with ICTA, recently set up the Contact Sri Lanka portal, so that Sri Lankans spread out across the world could connect with both the Foreign Ministry in Colombo as well as missions abroad. And through this connection, and already about 50,000 have so far registered in this portal, and we are getting questions which we are answering on a very speedy basis. And it is important that we have an understanding of who is where, so that then we can meet their needs at the present moment and also have a better idea. If things were to get very bad in a particular locality for our people, how we would respond. It is unfortunate that there is a lot of disinformation and misinformation out there, exaggerating situations, and also I think now on situations like the recent scare that all our students from Australia were going to be sent home. It was an unnecessary exaggeration. We have about 15,000 Sri Lankan students in Australia. We have been assured by the Australian government, but they are in no danger of having to leave Australia. There are about 5,000 short-term visitors on visitor visas. I would think that many of them are either parents visiting children or children visiting parents. And it is these and other tourist categories which the Australian government encouraged to get back to their home countries unless they have sufficient means to sustain themselves. So we are, while taking count of this, we are also trying to explore the possibility of extension of visas. And I must say that not only in Australia, but in all countries which we have been canvassing for this, there has been a very good response to try to give more time for Sri Lankans who are stuck in these countries to stay on there without becoming illegal or getting into any difficulty. And I'm thankful to, the Foreign Ministry is thankful to governments for having afforded this facility. And in fact, before even others did, Sri Lanka was one of the first to extend visas for all foreign tourists on short-term visit visas to Sri Lanka. And as we speak, I think about 1/3 of those who were there, of the foreign tourists, as at the point the curfew came into play, 1/3 of them are still in this country, which is a tremendous acknowledgement of their confidence in Sri Lankan medical authorities, as well as the facilities and facilitation being done by the tourist board, our hotel industry, as well as all those who come into this chain of work. I must say at this same point that we are also very well integrated with the rest of the world, and on the one hand helping in supporting global efforts and regional efforts like the SARC COVID Fund, and reciprocally we are also receiving a lot of assistance, both medical as well as in other means, to try to get through this very difficult period. And the Foreign Ministry also is working, particularly our economic divisions, in trying to facilitate movement of goods and goods in particular for our exporters, trying to find them new markets, trying to find them substitute products which they can export, so that when this problem is over, the day after, Sri Lanka will not have lost its economic contact with the world, but can pick up from where we were and where we will be and move forward.
As of today, 54 COVID-19 infected individuals have fully recovered in the island and have been discharged from hospitals. The number of patients currently undergoing treatment is 129. These patients are undergoing treatment at the Angoda IDH, the Valikanda Base Hospital and the Mullaria, the Colombo East Base Hospital. The total number of confirmed cases in the island is currently 190, whilst the number of COVID-19 deaths is 7. Medical investigations are underway into 224 individuals suspected to have contracted the virus. The highest number of confirmed cases, which is 21, was reported after the 31st of last month.
විසින් මෙම COVID-19 රෝගය සම්බන්ධයෙන් පරීක්ෂා කිරීම ක්‍රමක්‍රමයෙන් වැඩි කරලා තියෙනවා. අද දින කිසි රෝගියෙකු වාර්තා වෙන්නේ නැහැ. එම පරීක්ෂණ
The funeral rites of a deceased individual of the Akuras area in Gaul were conducted according to international quarantine guidelines, as it was suspected that the deceased individual who was undergoing treatment at the Karapitiya hospital had contracted the virus. The deceased individual's son is currently undergoing treatment at the IDH after testing positive for COVID-19. Therefore, it was suspected that his 72-year-old father had been infected by the virus. However, it was later confirmed that the deceased individual was not a COVID-19 patient. Nevertheless, steps were taken to conduct the final rites in accordance with international quarantine guidelines. Meanwhile, laboratory investigations have confirmed that the individual admitted to the Kurunagala Teaching Hospital yesterday has not contracted the coronavirus. Upon suspicion that he was infected by the virus, the emergency treatment unit of the hospital was temporarily closed until the lab reports are received. The unit opened this morning and steps were taken to quarantine the hospital staff until the test results were received. An individual in the Al-Qasim city area in Puntland tested positive for the virus recently. This individual had reportedly arrived in the country on the 16th of March after attending a religious program in Indonesia. 65 individuals who had close interactions with this individual have been directed to the Punani quarantine center. This COVID-19 infected individual had also reportedly attended a funeral in the Tarapuram area in Mannar. Public health inspectors have directed the residents of the Arayakala and Kakunagolla villages of the Katupota Divisional Secretariat Zone in Variapula to a 14-day quarantine period. Several COVID-19 infected patients were reported from these villages over the past few days. Outsiders have been prevented from entering these villages. Army Commander Lieutenant General Shavendra Silva says 12 individuals from the Badulla and Matale areas have been sent to the Kahagulla quarantine center, whilst 23 individuals from the Jayal area were sent to the Oluvil quarantine center yesterday.
The government has taken steps to allocate 600 million rupees to speedily purchase fish harvests. This is with the objective of preventing the fisher community and the consumers from being inconvenienced. The concern was raised at the governing party group meeting held recently under the patronage of President Gotabaya Rajapaksa and Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa. At the meeting, Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa stated that steps need to be taken to protect indigenous industries and in order to meet the domestic demand to produce within the country itself foods such as rice, vegetables, fruits and meat products, whilst bearing in mind the situation that the spread of the COVID-19 virus can result in internationally. A mechanism to speedily purchase the fish harvest brought in by multi-day fishing vessels in keeping with guidelines laid down by the health sector has already been devised. The Premier further stated the government has also taken steps to implement a plan to have fish available in all areas of the island without shortage.
The police have taken steps to strictly implement the law against those found violating curfew regulations by travelling between districts except for duties pertaining to essential services. Steps have also been taken to arrest such violators and send them for a 14-day quarantine process. The government decided to impose curfew in order to ensure social distancing in a bid to contain the spread of the coronavirus. The imposed curfew will be in effect until further notice in the Colombo, Gampaha, Kalutara, Puntland, Kandy and Jaffna districts, which have been identified as high-risk zones. In other districts, curfew will be lifted at 6 a.m. on the 14th of April and will be reimposed at 4 p.m. on the same day. The government emphasizes that the Sinhala and Tamil New Year rituals and personal interactions need to be limited to family members only. Movement amongst districts is prohibited except for essential services. All measures are in place to ensure a continuous supply of essential food items and other commodities in order to facilitate the public with the convenience of purchasing goods from home. Those engaged in farming, small-scale tea estate cultivations and the cultivation of export crops are permitted to engage in agricultural activities regardless of the district. The government has taken steps to have all pharmacies open from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. in the districts which have not been declared as high risk and in areas which have not been quarantined. In the high-risk districts in which curfew is in fact in force, steps have been taken to obtain orders online or over the phone and arrange home delivery. Considering the risk of the coronavirus spread, the health and security units took steps to place certain areas in isolation, with special attention focused on the risk of the spread of the coronavirus. Atulagama in Kalutara, Akurana in Kandy and Tarapuram in Mannar were locked down. These areas are still considered quarantined areas and entry to or exit from these areas is completely prohibited until further notice. These areas are being monitored by defence units and public health inspectors. The imposed curfew in the Ratnapura and Palmadulla police divisions will be in force until further notice. With the detection of a COVID-19 infected patient from the Akkarepattu area in the Ampara district, security units have taken steps to restrict vehicular traffic arriving in the area. Our correspondent states that many roadblocks are in place and several police checkpoints have been set up along all the access roads to the Pothuwil town. Entry to and exit from the Thavayankulam area in Putlam has also been restricted due to the risk of the coronavirus. In addition, strict surveillance will be underway in the Jayala, Suduvella, Matara Hakmana and Kurunagala Katuputa areas, and our correspondents state that the entry of outsiders to these areas has been completely restricted. Security units are continuing operations throughout the island to nab curfew violators. The police headquarters state that currently over 20,000 individuals have been arrested for violating the curfew. The Consumer Affairs Authority today raided an outlet down Dam Street in Petta, which did not sell milk powder to consumers but secretly engaged in wholesale trading. Thereafter, the public was sold milk packets with the mediation of the Consumer Affairs Authority. An ambulance belonging to the Ratnapura Hospital and a bus deployed on essential services collided at the Senanayaka junction in Boralla today. 5 of the passengers in the ambulance were admitted to the Colombo National Hospital, and the ambulance was reportedly en route from the Ratnapura Hospital to the National Hospital and the Lady Ridgeway Hospital with a group of patients. The bus driver has been arrested and the Boralla police are currently conducting further investigations. Acting upon a tip-off received on the emergency line, the Kandy police succeeded in apprehending 3 individuals involved in distributing narcotics during the curfew period, under the pretext of providing essential services. Well, in the meantime, Prime Minister Boris Johnson left intensive care yesterday evening as he continues to recover from COVID-19, but he remains under close observation in the hospital, his office said yesterday.
UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson left the intensive care unit on Thursday evening as he continues to recover from COVID-19, but he remains under close observation in the hospital, his office said on Thursday. He's said to be in very high spirits. A statement from his office read, "The Prime Minister has been moved this evening from intensive care back to the ward, where he will receive close monitoring during this early phase of his recovery." The 55-year-old was admitted to the hospital on Sunday, and he spent 3 nights in emergency care. He was not put on a ventilator. The head of Britain's National Health Service, among many, saying social distancing must go on, though the number of new infections and hospital admissions may be starting to flatten. Hopes of the coronavirus crisis nearing a peak boosted Britain's stock markets. Also on the government's plate, how to finance a vast increase in spending to support a shattered economy. The world's 5th largest economy is facing what could be the worst economic hit since World War II.
And in other news from overseas, investigators boarded the Ruby Princess cruise ship in Sydney yesterday to take the black box from the ship, which disembarked hundreds of passengers infected with the coronavirus. It will be used as a part of a homicide investigation into the country's deadliest infection source.
Zipped up in hazard suits, clad in masks and gloves, Australian police boarded the Ruby Princess cruise ship in Sydney on Wednesday. This is the vessel that let off hundreds of passengers infected with the coronavirus, 15 of which later died. Officers went in to retrieve the black box from the ship. New South Wales Police Commissioner Mick Fuller said the black box will be used as part of a homicide investigation.
New South Wales police officers entered the Ruby Princess to gather evidence in relation to the Ruby Princess investigation. They spoke to the captain of the ship, who was extremely helpful. Ships have a black box very similar to that of international planes, and that and other evidence has been seized for further investigation.
This ship, owned by Carnival Corporation, has become a flashpoint of public anger in Australia. Last month, authorities granted the ship permission to disembark passengers without health checks. It went on to become the country's deadliest source of infections. Fuller confirmed that about 1,000 crew of various nationalities remain on board the Ruby Princess. He also thanked Australians for bringing crew goods while they remain shipbound.
Local community, can I thank you? Local community have dropped off a number of care packages at the port for the crew members, which I think speaks volumes of the local community in the southern area.
On a positive note, the infections within Australia hit its lowest number in 3 weeks on Wednesday. It's prompted authorities to begin arranging more flights to bring home Australians stranded abroad.
Well, in more COVID-19 news, the makers of specialized cameras to quickly scan for fevers as people enter crowded workplaces are grappling with soaring demand while confronting supply disruptions, forcing some to prioritize customers such as hospitals, executives told Reuters.
Specialized thermal cameras that quickly scan for fevers are now in high demand as U.S. businesses like Tyson Foods and Intel grapple with how to detect illness among employees before they enter the building. Camera makers say they're facing supply disruptions, so much so they're being forced to prioritize customers like hospitals.
In terms of the demand that FLIR's been seeing, we've been seeing exponential demand.
Frank Panisi is president of the Industrial Business Unit at U.S.-based FLIR Systems.
We've had to prioritize public entities, governments, essential service businesses, and other places where there's a high density of human traffic.
U.S. meat supplier Tyson Foods said this week it has installed camera systems at 3 plants and is working with vendors like UK-based Thermotechnics for further expansion. But camera makers caution the devices have limits to fever detection.
These cameras are not medical devices. They're a frontline tool, and they detect and give an early warning of an elevated skin temperature. So they take a picture of your face, and from looking at your face, typically the hottest point on your face occurs right here around the tear duct. And that's the most indicative of your internal body temperature. So what it's doing is it's screening your internal body temperature, or actually your external skin temperature near your eye, relative to others around you. And if you are higher, it will flag you and have you put out for additional medical screening from a trained professional.
Many U.S. companies are struggling to stay open during the pandemic. Those that turn to thermal camera technology hope it prevents potentially ill workers from entering the workplace. But U.S. health officials warn that people can spread the coronavirus without showing symptoms.
Now, cats can become infected with the new coronavirus, but dogs appear not to be vulnerable, according to a study published on Wednesday, prompting the WHO to say it will take a closer look at transmission of the virus between humans and pets.
A new study out on Wednesday found that cats can catch the coronavirus. It's prompted the WHO to say it will take a closer look at the transmission of the virus between humans and pets. The study was published on the website of the journal Science and found that ferrets can also become infected with the virus. However, dogs appear not to be vulnerable, as well as chickens, pigs and ducks. The study was aimed at identifying which animals are vulnerable to the virus so they can be used to test experimental vaccines to fight the COVID-19 pandemic. The study, based on research conducted in China in January and February, found when researchers attempted to infect the animals, cats had the virus in the mouth, nose and small intestine. It also found felines can infect each other through respiratory droplets, and that kittens exposed to the virus had massive lesions in their lungs, nose and throat. Based on the evidence so far, WHO epidemiologist Maria Van Kerkhove has warned, quote, "We don't believe that they are playing a role in transmission, but we think that they may be able to be infected from an infected person." Heads turned last week over a tiger at the Bronx Zoo in New York City. It showed symptoms of a dry cough and loss of appetite, and then tested positive for the coronavirus last Sunday. However, zoo managers have confirmed the big cat, 2 other tigers and 3 lions are expected to recover. For pet owners at home, the data backs up health professionals' calls for people who have COVID-19 to distance themselves, not only from household members, but now also from their pets.
And in other news from home, the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna has suspended the party membership of Thanamalvila Pradesha Sabha member Nalaka Ranavira. The member has been expelled due to charges levelled against him pertaining to molesting a 13-year-old girl in the Sevanagala area. Upon the instructions of National Coordinator of the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna, Basil Rajapaksa, Party General Secretary Sagala Karyavasam has directed the expulsion letter to Nalaka Ranavira. Nalaka Ranavira and 4 others who absconding police were arrested by the Sevanagala police and upon being produced before court were remanded until the 21st of this month.
The report on the insurance cover introduced by Sri Lanka Insurance for public sector employees who are combating the COVID-19 epidemic has been presented to President Gotabaya Rajapaksa. The report was submitted to the President by the Chairman of Sri Lanka Insurance, Dr. Jagath Vellavatta. Thereby, public sector employees who are engaged in operations to combat the COVID-19 epidemic will be covered by a 1.5 million rupee insurance policy. The report was also presented to Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa. Health service staff will also be covered by this policy, and the relevant report was presented to Minister Pavitra Wanyarache. The policy also covers security personnel of the Tri-Forces. The report in this regard was presented to Army Commander Lieutenant General Shavendra Silva. Well, that's it from the Rupavahini News Desk for tonight. Make sure you stay safe, stay indoors and take care of yourself. On that note, join us once again tomorrow. Take care. Good night.
Good night.